Let me tell you the story about how I started an entire guerrilla warfare campaign to avenge my newfound friend. It all started with me spawning in on the beach. You see, Ark had recently been announced as the free game for PlayStation Plus, so there was going to be a big influx of completely new players hopping on. And knowing just how brutal PvP could be, I decided that these guys could probably use somebody in their corner. I was going to do the best I could to help these people out. But literally homeless on the beach right now, I'd probably need to set up a base first before I could dream of doing anything like that. Perfect landing. Having put together a basic kit and made my way to the redwoods, I took advantage of some of the local raided bases nearby, got myself a set of metal tools, and set up a basic 2x1 hidden in a shrub. Now this claustrophobic little hellhole isn't exactly what I'd call comfortable living, but it's got all the amenities I need, and at this point I'm more used to living in these than in actual bases. Now, sort of an homage to another time I helped some new players out, I had also equipped the Goblin skin, but this time a scarred and tattered version. This little goblin freak right here has been through the ringer. With that done, I began searching the redwoods for a thyla. Once I found one, I built the actual weirdest trap I've ever done. I have no idea why I did this. There's a million better designs, but here we are. Then I lured the thyla in, knocked it out, and soon she was mine. As soon as I tamed the thyla, one of the first messages I saw in global chat was someone asking for a cure, and I took this as a sign. You see, in Ark servers, there's a disease called swamp fever that originates from infected leeches. Now, I don't know what asshole is going out there and looking for infected leeches to start the plague, because I've only ever seen 2 in my thousands of hours in this game, but nevertheless, once the first person is infected, it's basically already over. Anybody coming within like 10 feet of someone who's got the plague will also find themselves infected. So in a matter of literally a couple hours, everybody on the server will be infected. And this has to be one of the most persistent diseases ever, because it'll even follow you through death. That's right, every time you spawn back, you still have swamp fever. To actually get rid of it, you need to make a cure with rare flowers, rare mushrooms, and leech blood. Now this stuff can be a big pain in the ass to get. But for me, on my thyla, which has the ability to bee-hop and get speed every time it consecutively jumps, this really won't be too big of an issue. So I decided I'd try my hand at a little bit of plague curing. First things first, I need to go find some beaver dam and raid it for rare flowers. Bingo. With that done, I need to head into the swamp and try to find some leeches. There we are. And last but not least, a little bit of swamp deforestation to get a couple rare mushrooms. After having felled a couple trees, I lucked out and got a couple rare mushrooms. I mean, they are rare, it's literally in the name. And so now I was able to make a decent couple antidotes. Time to go out and pass them around to the people. He's cured! You're gonna be cured! Hell yeah! Oh. On my journeys, I came across this kind of weird mushroom-shaped house belonging to a guy called Tribe of Humano. Now, upon seeing me, the two of these guys fled inside, a little bit terrified of me, and started peering out the windows, but after I did a couple pretty sick backflips, I earned their trust. And after giving them a cure, I saw that these guys could probably use a little bit more help than that. So I also threw them a set of metal tools and armor that I'd gotten off some guy who tried to kill me. And on top of that, I lavished them with my attempt at Spanish.
Muchas gracias, tío.
No problemo, senor. Would you believe me if I said I got good grades in middle school Spanish? Luckily though, for everybody involved, one of the guys did actually speak English.
You are the best. You are the best. We love you.
Thank you.
You're too nice, man. After speaking to them for a while and having a good look around their base, I realized that the whole thing was made out of wood. meaning any old random could come by and just kind of tear the whole thing down. So I hopped back to my stone 2x1 and picked up a metal 2x1 that I'd gotten from a drop, as well as some other gear and supplies, and gave it out to them. They were as thankful as you could ever be. After this, I left them for a couple hours and let them do their own thing. The next time I returned a couple hours later, I found a pack of like 4 guys outside their door fucking with them. So I went to take care of these guys. Oh, you're fucked. They started running back to the beach, but I had to make sure these guys knew they weren't welcome around here anymore.
Bro,
Killing about 2 of them and their tames, and bringing the gear back from my boys at Humano, these guys hopped on their raft and sailed away. It's like I pushed back some sort of Viking assault or something. So I returned back to Humano and just spoke with them for a while. The whole time the guy had his shirt off and he looked like one of those old tubes of bologna, you know, like the plastic ones, which I've recently found out is actually called a chub of bologna, which puts the whole thing in a completely different perspective. While I was admiring his processed meat physique, we decided that it would probably be good if we added each other on Discord. That way, if some shit like this happened again, I could help them out. And so after that, I once again began looking for people to cure when, not even 10 minutes later, I received a message from them that they were under attack. And this time, it seemed to be a lot more serious. I got over there as fast as I could. As soon as I rounded the hill, I saw him breaking down their door. I needed to take him by surprise. I'd gotten ahead of myself and I just barely missed him. With him mounting on his Argentavis, this became a lot more difficult. He could rip me straight off the back of my Thylo and then I'd be fucked. But I wasn't going to give up on Humano. I stayed in the fight. I needed to land a bolo on him while avoiding being picked. This wasn't going to be easy. And so our battle raged on. Him angling to try to pick me, and me trying to land a Hail Mary bola shot on him. His Argentavis wasn't a low level either. This thing had a lot of stamina. But so long as I was there, he couldn't break into Humano's home. Eventually, this idiot made a mistake. He took up a sniper's position on a rock overlooking the area in which we were fighting, but he was flanked from both the north and south by woodlands. I knew exactly what to do. I backed off in such a way to make it seem like his sniper fire was really fucking me up, and then, once I was out of vision, I looped around using the woodlands as cover and appeared behind him. With him none the wiser, I once again had the drop on him, and this time, I wasn't going to make the same mistake.
Not missing this time.
With him now bullet, he can't move for the next 30 seconds. I can just fucking maul him.
Whip? You serious?
And so I sat there biting and biting away, but no matter how many times I hit the guy, he just wouldn't die. Eventually, the 30 seconds ran up and he was free.
Bro, how are you still alive?
With him now back on his RG, I was forced to retreat again. And it was at this point I realized I wasn't up against just any random guy. These guys belonged to a giant tribe. You see, regular armor would have been torn apart in 4, maybe 5 bites. But this guy, I'd bitten him about 20 times and I could see his armor was hardly even damaged. He was wearing Ascendant Flak, the most protective armor in the entire game. But knowing that this guy had the best shit only made me want to stand up for Humano even more. So I stayed in the fight. Seeing that he didn't have a chance of catching me, like the actual villain from a movie, he turned his attention back towards raiding Humano.
Got him again, I got him again!
Now was my chance. I bowled him again. Not only had the guy's armor stood up to it again, his incredibly high quality pike had meant that I had taken more damage than he had. He was using all his fancy gear to pick on Humano in his fucking wood house. Although I was hurt, I wasn't dead yet. I could still help Humano. I continued dodging around, hoping that maybe the next bowler would be the one that would kill him when I saw that this guy's buddy was coming. Now it was hopeless. Maybe I could have killed one if I'd gotten lucky, bowled him a couple more times, but with the second one, there's no shot. I'm not gonna lie, it was very tempting to just turn around and run away in this moment. This fight was hopeless, and if I turned around and just ran, there's no way they'd catch me. But then, I'd be leaving Humano to fend for himself. I couldn't do that. I'd stay and do whatever little I could to help. I took a short moment to retreat out of sight into the woods and send them advice on a last-ditch, desperate defense. And they would need this advice. With 2 guys there, the raiders were making very good progress into Humano's base. As I continued maneuvering around looking for some sort of opening, a third one of them appeared. Mounted on a Meguana, the fastest tame in the game, and wearing a tech armor, I was fucked. This guy has X-ray vision, the ability to fly, run ultra fast speeds, punch through buildings, and here he is to join the fight against Humano. The first thing he did when he got here was destroy one of Humano's neighbors. I tried to stop him, but there was nothing I could do. Like some kind of sick demonstration of what would happen to Humano, they tore the base down till there was nothing left. I was outgeared and outnumbered. There was one last thing I could do for Humano, and so I communicated my plan to him. Simply put, I would run in, get all of their attention, and try to hold them off for as long as I possibly could as Humano packed up every valuable they had and made a run for it. I was greatly injured and I was going up against some serious gear, but they needed just this one last thing from me. Let's see what I can do.
Watch this. I'm just gonna jump straight past you.
They'd brought out their own much higher level Thylo, but to be honest, the guy had no fucking idea what he was doing. I didn't have to worry about him.
And you flamed your own cat, you fucking dummy.
I had them distracted for a good bit, but Humano needed more time.
He's coming over on tech. Are you for fucking real?
Thus began the dance between me and the tech guy. He would fly around using a compound bow to drop my health further and further, as I tried desperately just to buy more time. And hell, I even landed a couple hits in myself, but my health was dropping, and fast. I couldn't do this much longer.
You don't like that I'm not some little fat shack that you can just destroy, right?
Just as I was about to run out of health, I finally received the good news. Humano had made it out safely. I was done here. I turned around and left as quick as I could. Their base was now doomed, but hell, it had basically already been that as soon as the second RG guy showed up. The fact that Humano was able to get him and all his valuables out of there alive is really the best we could have gotten out of this situation. After this, I went and visited them in their new base spot and gave them some advice, essentially telling them to build a hidden base and again giving them another set of metal tools. And it was at this point that Humano asked me, how are you supposed to get stone in this game? You see, these guys were so new that they literally didn't understand that pickaxes and hatchets give you different resources. They didn't know that in order to get stone, you had to hit a rock with a hatchet. And these are the guys that all that shit had been brought out to destroy. And it was with this final last piece of information, I knew exactly what had to be done. The scumbags that attacked Humano would have the exact same punishment meted out to them in turn, an eye for an eye. So it's about time we properly introduce Humano's attackers. They were a tribe under the name of Good Grief. A fitting name, huh? Now I had no idea where these guys lived or how many of them there were, but I knew for certain that they were a big tribe because of the shit they'd brought out. So I returned to Humano's base hoping to find some sort of clues for what had happened. I found his base torn open and some people inside.
He's one of those little assholes.
This was one of the guys from Good Grief. Killing the guy, the only things I found on his body were a C4 detonator and a pair of their very good gloves. Looking at the stats of these, I could see that they were literally 8 times as protective as the shit I was wearing, which explained why they were able to take such a beating. They'd come back even after the base was open, literally just to destroy the rest of it. And then I saw another naked guy running up. Again, another member of Good Grief, and he was once again naked, meaning he had spawned in recently. But that didn't really make any sense. He had approached from the northwestern direction, whereas all spawns on the beach were to the east of us, meaning he had spawned on a bed. So let's just retrace his steps backwards and see what we find. So he ran in from this direction. Bingo. Fucking found you. I had found Good Grief's base. Hidden deep within the woods was a base bristling with heavy and tech turrets. On top of that, they had some of the most advanced crafting structures and industrial equipment possible. And surrounding all of it was multiple rings of plant species X. And all of this concealed beneath the jungle canopy. This meant that their base was not only one of, if not the strongest bases, it was also hidden to most people. They had like an actual secret fucking villain lair. They'd gone through a lot of effort to make sure that this shit didn't get found. And so a direct attack for them would be impossible. Not only for me, but for practically everybody else on the server. So you know what that means? I think it's time for a little bit of guerrilla warfare. As I was further scouting out the base, I decided to also take a look at where Humano's base had been and found it completely wiped out. So I traveled to Humano's new base and broke the news to him. And frankly, he was devastated. And so the gloves were off for Good Grief. I would do whatever it took to get back at these guys. While bases like these may seem invincible, there's always little nooks and crannies you can pick at if you have an eye for it. First thing I noticed is a classic, a bit of tame sniping. See, with a hidden base like this, they had just left their tames out in the open. Nobody knows they live there. And plus, they have enough turret coverage to prevent anyone from getting close enough to snipe anyway. Here's a rough map of their base. The red square is their base itself. The black line is a series of cliffs overlooking their base. The red is the area covered by turrets. Basically, if I go in there, I'm instantly dead. And the yellow is area covered only by plant species X. These shoot slow, low damage projectiles that can easily be dodged, but only for a limited amount of time. But combine this with the fact that they have intentionally kept up the entire forest around their base, I can go into this area, dodge around for a little bit, find a blind spot where a tree covers me, and then have a good visual over their base. And so I grabbed a good quality crossbow, a couple hundred arrows, and did exactly that. Crawling into position and peering through my spyglass, I found the exact same Thylo that they'd used to counter me a while ago. So it was arrows away. After about 250 arrows, yes literally, the Thylo was dead. So I worm crawled my way to another position and saw what else I could shoot. Nice. About 10 minutes later, they came back to look through the bushes for me with very little luck. But it did mean that tame sniping was now off the menu. These two tames would be a good start to our long and bloody war. After that, I decided the next best course of action for me would be to knock down all the trees nearby that were concealing their base. Because they're within enemy foundations, they won't respawn. While I can't exactly get the trees closest to their base, which are protected by turrets, I can get all the ones around it, and a large patch of trees surrounded by nothing is pretty conspicuous. So it'll achieve the exact same purpose of making their base known to the server, something they very clearly want to avoid. After a while, Good Grief noticed my efforts and appreciated my arboreal services so much that they came out on pyromanes and set me on fire a couple times. But as soon as I would go to fight back, they would just run straight back into their turrets, which is kind of pathetic to have all that gear and then be running away from a guy and hide. So I continued chopping trees. Apparently me chopping down these trees must have been some kind of sore spot for them, because they still were trying their best to get me to stop, but since they were now too scared to push me when I have the most shit gear possible, they started crawling around in the grass with a sniper hoping to shoot me in the head. But he had a pyromane on his shoulder in the middle of the night, so he stuck out like a sore thumb. So I'd go in to punish him, I'd bola him and try torching him, but it was basically impossible to kill him. Set him on fire, he's got extinguisher grenades. Get his health low, he's got med brews. Get anywhere near him and he's got a flamethrower. But I was starting to have a lot of fun because this whole situation was absurd. There's a fat little goblin man outside knocking down trees and it's pissing these guys off, but they don't have the ability to just push me off their land. So I just kept chopping trees. Now these tree shenanigans must have been really pissing these guys off because they just started lobbing grenades in my general direction.
Those aren't even getting close, bro. You're trying to shoot me through that rock. That's not gonna work. What's with this suppressive fire, bro? Dude, these aren't even close, bro. All of this, by the way, for a guy in hide armor with stone tools. It seems that good grief was not used to people standing up to them in any way. Oh my god, dude. Every once in a while, they would get a little bit brave and push out from their turrets, where they would immediately get bullied. I'd get a couple good hits in on them before they pulled out the flamethrower, and then they'd be forced to run back into turrets and just start chucking grenades again. I was having so much fun here that it felt wrong to not share, so I started up a live stream, and a bunch of people started joining to help me just fuck around with these guys. I set up beds nearby so people could spawn in, and started adding people to my tribe. We had no great goal or ambition, we were just here to fuck around and have a little bit of fun. And before long, a good amount of people showed up, and this place started having sort of a party-like atmosphere. With all these people here, we began a mass deforestation program. After clearing out a nice chunk of wood like we were fucking lumberjacks or something, we placed foundations and pillars within the area so the trees wouldn't respawn. Again, instead of coming out and just killing us, which would be pretty easy considering we have no gear, they instead decided to just start moving up their turrets, which was pretty fucking lame. So we started getting a little more creative with our builds. I gotta come up here at least once. So we could take out their gen. Okay, I let the archers do their job. I gotta be down. I'm a foot soldier for sure.
Go! Climb quickly! The ladder still stands, you're okay! Get down from there! And so our half party, half siege raged on. And you know what? Our supply lines weren't even that bad. In fact, at one point, a guy ran a series of pipes down to the nearest source of water, so we had fucking fresh water on tap right near their base. By the standards of a siege, we were doing pretty good. You know, so long as you exclude the fact that this had no chance of actually working and we were just here dicking around. A while later, I suppose after a whole bunch of them had hopped online, they mounted up on their strongest tames and finally pushed us back. Although they were successful in pushing us back, it wasn't without losses. They lost a Therizino and a Pyromane in the process. Not too bad considering we were literally using bows and arrows and fucking stone hatchets. After this, energy to start fucking around just sort of fizzled out, which is pretty normal for gatherings like these. In the aftermath of the party, like the homeowners coming back to a trashed house, these guys were now forced to clean up the giant mess we'd left outside. All the meanwhile, a couple of people hung around and ambushed them from the forest, running away with a couple of their kits. But like the storming of the Bastille or Bloody Sunday, the first gathering outside Good Grief's base would prove to be the first spark that would begin the rebellion against them. You see, as it stood, for the moment, I was the only person who was truly against Good Grief. But just like in a real rebellion, as I secured further wins against Good Grief, and victory seemed more plausible, these numbers would swell, as too with the supplies at my disposal. And for every humiliating defeat on Good Grief's end, or unlikely victory that we secured, the fervor of those within the tribe would increase. Now, I was about as committed as you could be, but one guy isn't enough, not for a tribe with Good Grief size anyway. The revolution had begun. We would avenge Shimano. Might take a while, but we'll get there, one way or another. To facilitate fucking with Good Grief, a great amount of bases would be required. After all, defending a base against them would be nearly impossible. Better to just disperse and make it impossible to wipe me out completely. These bases fell into 4 broad categories. The first of these was a simple manufacturing base. Built at the base of metal-rich mountains, simply put, these would be used to gather as many resources as we could. However, since they're not hidden that well, the actual resources would be stored inside these supply bases. Hidden deep within jungles in the most concealed spots that we could find, these bases were only accessed very rarely.
And of course we followed that old adage about not keeping all your eggs in one basket. If one of these was found and destroyed, it'd be a bummer, but not exactly the end of the world. Next we had respawn bases, which are the most disposable of all the bases we had, and that's saying a lot. Basically, we'd put these as close to the good grief space as we actually could. That way when we went to go fuck with them or scout them out or get in a fight, we would have easy respawn access. Inside, all we had were beds for respawn, so it didn't matter at all if these got found. And trust me, they found a fucking lot of these. And last but not least were decoy bases, and these were bases built specifically to be found and destroyed by them. These would serve two purposes. First is they would keep good grief spinning around in this hamster wheel of finding these bases and destroying them while making them feel like they're putting a fucking real dent in us when they're not. And two, it would help the fervor of the tribe every time one of these was found, because clearly we're getting to them if they're out there looking for us. So as the story progresses, just keep in mind that these bases are continuously being found, and then another one is built to take its place. Overall, we had a very decentralized operation. No matter what base got found and destroyed, we could always build back. Now after the first gathering outside Good Grief's base, I had added about 15 people to my tribe during that, a great many of which had already played on the server but had quit a while ago, meaning I inherited a shit ton of old abandoned bases all across the map. And as I'd been sleeping, Good Grief had made an immense effort to fly all across the map, finding every single one of these basically decoy bases that they could. Despite putting in a lot of effort, they didn't find any of the bases that actually mattered. But clearly they were already very upset with me. That little dicking around we done outside their base had clearly hit a soft spot. I guess it's only fun for these guys when they're the ones fucking other people over. And this exact action of flying around and destroying everything they could just shot themselves in the foot, because this motivated one of the people from the first gathering outside their base to now join me in my cause. I was no longer alone. Seeing how upset they had gotten over me knocking down trees yesterday, I decided that this would be a good angle to prod them from. But the trees protecting their actual base were covered by turrets, so we couldn't just walk up and mine them like we'd done with some of the outer ones. But I had a solution for this. So I went out, tamed a pterodon, saddled it up, grabbed a set of metal tools, and transferred to a scorched earth server. It was time to make fire arrows. All I had to do was get some sulfur and cactus sap and bring it back to the island. Having gotten enough strange desert chemicals to make about 700 flame arrows, I returned back to the island, now well stocked on supplies. So me and the only other active member of my tribe, Hamoud, went over to Good Grief's base to knock a couple trees down. All we gotta do is hit him with a single flame arrow and down she goes. And considering we're literally shooting into a forest, it's pretty fucking hard to miss. Dude, this shit is so easy, are you kidding me? After about 100 arrows, we had done a very good job of exposing their base to the open air, which was good for two main reasons. First things first, it would piss them off, which is never a bad thing to do. But secondly, it would be a pretty big pain in the ass to fix. Because the trees are within range of foundations, they aren't going to grow back on their own. Instead, Good Grief is now forced to use a very finicky tool called refertilizer. Basically, you press this and everything in a small radius around you regrows. But not only is it kind of a weird thing to craft, but it's also super shitty because it doesn't show you what it's going to regrow. So to actually get a forest looking normal again, you have to use an obscene amount of this stuff. And this right here is one of the fundamentals of effective guerrilla warfare. Whenever possible, try to inflict damage on the enemy that is more resource intensive for them to repair than it is for you to inflict. In the case of the fire arrows to refertilizer ratio, we're looking at about 1 minute of effort for fire arrows is 2 or 3 minutes of effort for refertilizing. Not an insane ratio, but not half bad either. Once we had finished firing about 100 arrows, we saw Good Grief coming back to base, so we disappeared off into the forest. And from there, we watched them as they continued searching for us. Thinking themselves clever, they had one of their tribe mates run around on the floor naked acting as bait, with another guy sitting in the woods on an RG, ready to pounce as soon as we attack the naked guy. Now, I'm not sure why they thought this was gonna work, because we just knocked down all the trees so we could much more easily tell what they were doing now, but this gave us another opportunity to use one of my favorite strats. Basically, it's just ding-dong ditching, or if you prefer, whatever absurd name the English have for it. What you do is basically do anything that gets their attention, in this case knocking down trees with fire arrows, and as soon as they start looking for you, you immediately leave the area, fuck off and do something actually useful like go mine more resources or get some new tames, all the meanwhile they're still looking for you. Now, as soon as they're getting ready to call it quits on the search for you, you once again do something to get their attention. And this is perfect because now they're going to think that you were there the entire time and they hadn't been thorough enough in their search. So when you run away again, they're going to spend twice as fucking long looking for you in the undergrowth. So while they schizo-maxed and searched around to try to find me in bushes that I was not in, I went to go help Humano at his new base with taming a couple frogs.
Yes, I really need a frog. At least one frog. So
with the frog knocked out, I went and got some cementing paste from my boy because he didn't know how to get any, and with that, he was able to make the saddle. Fuck yeah, let's go, dude. Soon after helping Humano tame and saddle his new frogs, I got word from Hamoud that he had spotted one of Goodgrief's members far from his base all on his lonesome on an RG. I hopped over there as fast as I could on my Thylo, while Hamoud continued to shadow him with a PT. Once I got close, we coordinated an ambush on him. Hamoud would fly in, rip him off his RG with his pterodon, and then I'd hop in on the Thylo to finish the job. Hamoud had picked him. Hearing him land nearby, now was my chance. Pushed off the cliff, the guy fucking died to fall damage. And with nobody else around to save it, we soon munched on the RG. A perfectly executed ambush on our end. And the best part? The guy and the RG that we killed here were the exact same ones who had begun griefing Humano. I guess your good armor can't save you when you're plummeting off a fucking cliff, right? Maybe use your fucking parachutes next time? Like, I don't know, that's kind of an embarrassing way to die. The guy had come out with very minimal gear and only a spyglass, meaning he'd come out here looking for our bases. And frankly, he'd gotten pretty close to a couple important ones. But overall, this is a pretty good win. Aside from just the stuff that we stole and killed, it also made it abundantly clear to them that it was no longer safe to go outside their base alone. And on top of that, motivated a further 2 people to join our cause. With our newfound members, we began setting up ambushes outside their base, but whenever we would kill someone and go in to take their loot, we'd always get cock-blocked by one thing, their stegos. If you imagine us as guerrilla forces descending from the jungle and these guys as like some government, these stegos were basically their tanks. Although they're very slow and their maneuverability is garbage, killing them is basically impossible. You see, these stegos will have around 40,000 HP with something like 80% damage reduction. So say for example we were dumb enough to try to kill it with a revolver, it would take somewhere around, 2,000 shots. And while it may look like the rider is an easy target off the back of it, any damage he takes is just transferred to the stego. Now, we tried to use gas grenades on them, but the guy riding it's wearing a tech helmet, meaning he's immune to it. And while explosives are able to damage the rider, these guys have good enough armor to face tank 10 fucking rockets. And that is, of course, assuming they don't have an extra set of armor on them. In terms of offense, the Stego Rider is able to use a rocket launcher. Do you kind of see the tank comparison now? Comparing these things to tanks is actually a bit of an understatement, because at least with a tank, you can get like a lucky RPG shot and knock it out. These things have absurd area control, and whenever they'd bring it out, we'd continuously have to play around it. If one of them died, they would just park the stego over their body and mash the fucking attack button until he was able to come back and grab his loot. Frankly, it was a pretty lame way to play considering we're outside their base and hide armor, but in the end it was kind of a good thing, because every time they did it, it made us that more dedicated to finally bringing them down.
Oh, rocket. Again, bro? Are you so free?
Oh my.
fucking guy was using his tech helmet scan, meaning he could see me, but he couldn't see that his rockets were hitting a fucking boulder. He's coming in.
Hold him.
Bullet and caught out with the stego far away. This guy was fucked. Bullet, he's bullet by the way, get him! Although that rocket killed most of us, it had also killed their pterodon. So, you know, real good job saving your tame right there. Also, when the stego went to camp our bodies, he was the only one there. So we would sort of just take turns getting his attention while someone ran underneath him, picked up a piece of loot and ran away until eventually we had all of our loot back. So, good job, I guess, good grief. You killed your own tame and then you didn't even stop us from getting our loot back. After this embarrassing loss, they refused to go out on anything except stegos, so there was nothing we could do. Eventually, we just left the area. And with that, the first eventful day of the rebellion drew to a close. This was a good start, but we had plenty more in store for them. The week following was characterized by a building up of strength on our end and low intensity skirmishes and ambushes. One of our first actions was to gather everybody together, take the remaining flame arrows, and go to their base and have a mass tree knocking down party. Archers! Draw! Loose! I'm sorry, I've always wanted to do that. After this, their base was left entirely exposed and hanging out in the open. This allowed me to come back at a later date, go on top of one of the cliffs overlooking their base, and hop into photo mode, which if you're clever with, you can use like a fucking spy drone. Using my spy camera, I was able to see one of their guys sleeping on a feeding trough like one of those pinup girls they put on the planes in World War II, so I did the reasonable thing and shot him to death. Another time, I found one of their outside generators had been left to run out of gas, so I used a piece of C4 to destroy the expensive heavy turrets that were now powered offline. Although small little acts of sabotage like these might not seem meaningful, anything that weakens or demoralizes the enemy is worth doing. And keep in mind, while all this is going on, we are continuing to grow in both resources and numbers. It seems that we had truly become a headache for them because at one point, playing their role of a fucking Disney villain perfectly, they gave me an offer to simply give up the fight and join them. Although perhaps making for an interesting alternate reality, I obviously refused. What other cliche villain line would come from them next? Would they say that I'm not so different from them after all? At one point, I was crawling through the jungle grass nearby their base. However, using the X-ray vision of their tech helmet, they saw me. They hit me with a tranq dart and knocked me out cold. I was brought into their base and handcuffed to a chair. Now without the ability to respawn, I was basically stuck here. They gathered the whole tribe around, incredibly pleased with themselves. And so I'd have to spend the next 8 hours in this prison before I was able to kill myself and respawn. But this wasn't nearly the win they thought it was. First things first, taking an 8-hour break from Ark isn't the worst thing in the world. But secondly, the tribe was so decentralized that even with me locked up, they were able to continue their operations perfectly fine. And at this point, we were starting to put some pretty serious gear together. At any rate, within 8 hours, I was free once more. The next day, as I was farming, I saw that they had now begun a fucking bounty program for us. And when I saw that, I began cooking up a little bit of a scheme. So here was the general plan. Me and another member of the tribe, Chad, would transfer our characters off the server, which would then allow us to make new characters. We would both quickly do a note run on these characters so that they weren't level 1, which would be really suspicious, and then Chad would rejoin the tribe. I, however, had created a character with a different name and would not join the tribe. I was now Henry421, and of course I changed my Steam name along with this. Then, when Chad had to leave to go to school, he would log out his character on the beach, and I would go over to where he was, and invent some story about knocking him out on the beach and him rage quitting. So now I would have Chad, one of the principal members of the rebellion, knocked out on the beach right here, ready to be caged. Never mind the fact that his actual character is on another server and he can transfer back at any time. And the character that Good Grief have caged is basically just an empty husk. And so that's exactly what I did. After a while, Good Grief came by, none the wiser to collect Chad's husk of a body. And for my valiant service of capturing this ne'er-do-well, I was richly rewarded. In exchange for basically scamming them, I was given a high-level Argy. Hell yeah, because Argies have such good weight, we can use this guy for a shit ton of farming, making our supply situation much better. Thank you, Good Grief, for helping us farm bullets and explosives that we will eventually use against you. The day after that, I decided to also be a leech again. This time, instead of a fake player, I would give them a fake base. So I gave them the coordinates for one of our little decoy bases in the Redwoods. But this time, they were trying to slow roll me, because a guy on tech came by, checked it out, and flew away without ever raiding the thing. It seems that these guys are so stuck in their own way of thinking, they don't even understand the fact that we're decentralized and we don't have some giant base. So when they see a relatively small base, they think it's nothing. And so as I tried to receive my reward from them in chat, they simply ignored me. Trying to scam a scammer, classic. But I knew exactly how to deal with these people and get my rightly earned reward. The trick is to be servile but not pathetic. So the first thing I did was call them out in global chat as scammers. And yes, I absolutely see the irony in that. I was giggling the whole time I was typing these messages out. How dare you take something from me that I've rightfully stolen? Now suddenly after I sent out that message, they stopped ignoring me. And we got into this long drawn out argument, and when the time was right, I apologized and sucked up to them. And with that, I had passed the speech check. They rewarded me once again, this time with a snow owl and a thylo. And then they never even ended up raiding the base I gave them coordinates to, so this was a success in all regards. And as far as I can tell, the only reports made to their bounty program were these two, which was just me scamming them. If you want to be a gorilla, you gotta be at least a little wily. The next few days continued, mostly with us building up forces and some low-level attacks near their base. But soon, a momentous piece of news would come that would change everything. The complete and total destruction of Yumano's home had been a festering wound that had truly never healed, and it was at this point that he gave up the ghost and simply quit the game. I received these messages from him, the final one being the most heartbreaking. I really want to keep playing, but just not good enough. With this, my resolve was hardened. We had to kick it up a gear, take down Good Grief faster. The longer we took, the more people would end up like Yumano. In his final addresses, Yumano had bestowed whatever was left in his base to me. I went to go collect it. It wasn't much, but I swore an oath that I would make good use of it. I took the time to assess our current strength. We had about 10 active members in total. Like a real rebellion, some were more involved than others. However, as an aggregate, our overall fervor was relatively low. A very good piece of news, however, is that some of our newest arrivals were part of a giant tribe on another server. This helped our supply situation greatly. Not so much in quantity, as most basic resources and gear could be manufactured locally on this server, but instead, we now had access to some of the top tier equipment and tames. Although it was on a much smaller scale than Good Grief, the disparity between our gear was shrinking, which if you'll remember, is really the only thing Good Grief have going for them. If you imagine this as like the Vietnam War and we're Vietnam, this is the USSR stepping in to help us out. Needless to say, it was a huge boon. With a glut of supplies, but not necessarily motivation, it was time to pay a visit to Good Grief's base and see what we could do to fuck around. When we got there, I caught one of their guys AFK, so I got out the old trusty long neck and put a couple shots in him. He's dead.
Nice.
Thank God he was AFK. There's no other way I would have gotten through that armor. When he came back, he grabbed his finest set of armor and his finest sniper, and we began a duel. Him with literally the best shit you could possibly have, and me wearing some pretty basic armor and using a shit gun.
It's so... It's actually...
I hit him. Seeing that there was relatively few of us outside and those that were here had poor gear, they bravely pushed out on their pyramanes and killed us. But this was good. We were spoiling for a fight, and having just killed us, Good Grief would be a lot more confident now. But we were no longer interested in an ambush or some other kind of trick. Our strength had grown so much that we now wanted to contest them in fair open ground. We hopped on some of our better tames and actually took some gear with us this time. Good Grief would still be better equipped than us, but again, the margin was much smaller than before. For my part, I hopped on the Argentavis that I had scammed off of them. It only felt fitting. Grouping up together, we then made a push on their base.
Can I pick the Pyroman? I'm gonna pick the Pyroman.
Finding all my boys engaged in a ground fight right next to their base, I simply flew in, picked the enemy Pyromane, and removed it from the equation. Without their Pyromane, Good Grief is now outmatched on the ground. With that, we were able to kill one of the guys and an RG. Not only that, but we walked away with his Ascendant fucking gear. This was a big come up. Once that was done and Good Grief retreated back into their turrets, everybody joined me down at the nearby river to help me kill the Pyromane. Just like every other time they face a situation they can't immediately steamroll, they once again came back out on the Stegos. So we started targeting those that weren't on a Stego, and we were succeeding in killing him, and that's when we realized their cheapest trick yet. To make their annoying ass Stego strat even stronger, they had equipped the fireworks skin on their rocket launcher, which for whatever reason makes it so that when you shoot your rocket launcher, it doesn't make any noise, which needless to say makes it almost impossible to dodge rockets when you don't know they're coming. This cheap trick in combination with the power of the Stegos was forcing us back. Deciding that this wasn't enough of a corny strat, one of their guys donned a suit of tech armor, took the best sniper they had in their entire base, and just flew up as high as he could go and started sniping down at us. Because his sniper was so good, he was really fucking up the team. Mounted on my slow ass RG, I was the only one who could really do anything, so I began slowly flying up towards him, hoping that he'd be too distracted sniping to see me coming.
Come and just fucking eat him with your thing. Oh, he's sniping me. Ow!
Wait, keep him sniping you.
Oh my, that really
I picked
hurt,
him.
With him now in my claws, I began doing what damage I could. As tempting as it was to hold on to him until he was dead, the flamethrower does damage to both my RG and me, so I would have been dead if I'd held on to him any longer. But all the same, to send him running with his tail tucked in between his legs when he has fucking tech armor on was exhilarating. Not to mention, fixing that armor is going to be anything except cheap. At this point, we fell back and regrouped, and before long, the Stegos were upon us once more.
I whistled aggressive on the Pyromane, it's big.
Golden?
Get him. Nice. Shit, RPG.
Was that him?
See if we can get this Desi.
Here we stood our ground and fought them as well as we could. Everybody that approached us on anything except a Stego was easily killed. We killed and looted a guy off a Thesi and a Thylo. But the Stegos themselves were just too oppressive. There's nothing you could do to hurt them, and these guys would just fucking spam rockets at you endlessly. You really do have to be rich to fight like these guys, because they went through a shit ton of rockets. Eventually, we started taking casualties. My RG was the first one to go, weakened and then finished off by the tech guy flying above. Then we lost to Pyromane. Once we saw that the momentum was no longer in our favor, we withdrew. The overall fight had been a wash. We had both lost a similar amount of tames on each side, and while we had lost more gear, they had lost significantly higher quality gear, not to mention the cost of all the rockets they just spammed at us. So although our general supply situation was worse, we had picked up a lot of high quality gear from this. But more importantly, this little scuffle filled us with hope. We had taken them in a regular stand-up fight and came up in a draw, and the fact that the only wins they'd managed to secure were literally sitting on the back of a Stego, basically impervious, really pissed us off, meaning everyone in the tribe was now fully committed. This now meant that those within our tribe, who were also within the bigger tribe on the other server, were able to bring in much more high quality equipment. Enough for everyone. We wouldn't be going into a fight undergeared ever again. And to restore our resource supply, we simply raided some of the lapdog tribes who sucked up to Good Grief. We had all the basic and advanced shit we needed and all the motivation in the world. We were done with ambushes and surprise attacks, and after what they had done with Humano, we were done with half measures. Today was the day that Good Grief would pay for what they'd done to Humano. We formed up outside their base, every member we had bringing their best tames and their best gear. We set up a small forward operating base across the hill from them. Here, we could gather forces while under the protection of our own heavy turret. And before long, Good Grief rode out on their Stegos. But even now we couldn't kill them. We used multiple people to shoot grapples into it so that it was so weighed down it couldn't even move. But even standing there stationary, we couldn't kill it. However, we did manage to scare them back into their base. This allowed us to continue the raid. First, we would use an overthrow to chew up as much of their land claim as we could so we could move our turret closer and closer to their base so we could keep the pressure on them. Once that was done and we were as close to their base as we could be, we brought up our own stegos. The plan was simple. All we literally had to do was soak up all the ammo from their turrets using our stego, and then their base would be defenseless. As part of the team was soaking the turrets, I made runs back and forth between some supply bases with more armor, materials, ammo, whatever we needed. And because our supply network was so well developed, this was a breeze. As I was coming back from one of these trips, I saw the stegos of Good Grief making a counterattack.
Turret's shooting, turret's shooting.
Energy kicks your stego.
I'm gonna go bite it, I'm gonna go bite it, I'm gonna go bite it.
But the dummy had forgotten his tech mask, and so our poison wyvern killed him. At this point, we were able to surround and kill one of their stegos. This was a watershed moment. The stegos had become sort of a symbol for Good Grief. They used these to rocket spam their way out of any fight they couldn't instantly win, and now one of them was dead. Good Grief had become soft, more used to picking on those inside wooden houses like Humano than fighting a tribe of their own size and strength. So today, we would give them a fair fight. We continued soaking their turrets. To keep them pinned down in their base, we began bombarding them with the poison wyvern. Although tech helmets do stop this, at this point it was all hands on deck for Good Grief. There simply weren't enough tech helmets to go around. But on top of that, we had a perfect sniper's view over their base. We didn't even have to kill them, we just had to break their helmet. And soon they started dropping like flies. Although meanwhile, the bullets in their turrets dropped lower and lower, and we were able to push up closer to their base.
I killed him. I headshot him. He's dead.
Nice. The combination of the sniper team and the poison wyvern basically fucking artillery meant that Good Grief wasn't able to mount any kind of defense whatsoever. And having recently brought in a rock golem to literally throw rocks at the plant species X, the writing was now on the wall. There was no way they could defend this base. And so Good Grief packed up everything they could and fled, just like Humano had done. And if you remember, I said we would have an eye for an eye. And hell, if all they'd done is scare Humano out of his house, this is probably where we'd leave it. But they had wiped every trace of Humano's base off the map, so we weren't done just yet. We kept making progress towards the base.
Tech rider for Jenny.
Wait, I'm stupid.
How
How
did
did
these
these
doors
doors
look this way?
Okay, okay.
How
Nice.
It was wonderful.
Random grubs come piling in.
Clambering inside the base, we blew our way to the generator room and found a tech generator. So we strapped that bitch with the requisite 15C4 and then realized we had no way out of the base. So, you know, we all kind of took one for the team.
Oh my god.
Oh my.
With the generator now turned off, none of the turrets had power, and the base was defenseless. Sticking true to my promise of an eye for an eye, we brought the overthrow around and wiped it completely. When we were done, it was like there'd never been anything there at all, just like Humano's base. Today, we had secured a great victory. Humano had been avenged, and we'd suffered barely any casualties in the process. Good Grief found themselves in a fair fight, and they had completely floundered, and so we basked in the glory of victory. Before realizing we weren't done quite just yet. As much as we might have wished our victory over Good Grief was final, it simply wasn't. Off in some corner of the Arctic, lurking deep beneath the waves, was a monstrosity, a multi-layered tech vacuum base constructed by Good Grief. Around the halfway point between me starting my actions against them and their base being raided, they had moved everything into here. And like some actual supervillain lair, this thing was deep underwater and surrounded by an army of turrets. A few concentrated in turret towers, but many others just scattered loosely around, and the whole thing was wrapped in an absurd amount of land claim around their base. Destroying something like this would be anything except easy, but we had to finish what we started. If not for ourselves, at least for Humano. So we took around a week to prepare, gathering all the resources and players that we could, and when the time was right, we began our assault. Our first action was to take a Zeppelin to Blue Ob, where Good Grief had their only overland teleporter base. Since it was on a cliff platform, we simply dropped that and the whole thing was gone. So now, they were hemmed in into their little corner of the ocean. We had them cornered. This time, there'd be no escape. I spawned in our underwater raid base, grabbed a basic set of gear, swam up to the furthest out vacuum pod we had, and joined the sniper team. Our job was to force Good Grief to keep their heads down while we used basilos like we'd used stegos in the last raid to soak up all the ammo in the base. But this base had multiple layers. This would take significantly longer.
Leave.
They got the deaths
Wait,
over here.
that's
Oh,
not
he's
the
swimming up.
Lost him. Oh, he's gone. He's gone.
At one point, we even managed to get the poison wyvern involved. Above the waves, like actual artillery, he couldn't see where his shots were hitting, so he coordinated with those of us down below, and before long, his shots found their mark. We were able to effectively stop Good Grief from being able to defend their base from us, and our soaking was going well. To attempt countering this, Good Grief brought out a motorboat. Laced with turrets, they could move this thing around and hit us from above, from which direction the turrets could shoot the Basilo rider instead of the tame itself, making this a very effective way to counter our attacks. So, we made it seem like we were pulling back, placed a couple underwater mines, and lured him in.
Oh, well.
I need to render this fucking thing.
There we go.
With the motorboat now gone, we could return to using basilos to soak up their base. But Good Grief was putting up stiffer resistance than before, so moving above the water, we began amassing strength on one of the ice shelves above their base. Seeing that we were winning, Good Grief made one final call to Old Reliable. They mounted up on stegos, grabbed as many rockets as they could, and came out to push us off the ice shelf. But that's not how this worked anymore. The time where that stupid strat would work was up. We simply grabbed the stego with our crab, and held him underwater, where both he and his tame would slowly drown, and his rockets wouldn't mean a thing since he couldn't shoot them. In his final moments, he tried to despawn his gear. What a fittingly pathetic way for such a pathetic strategy to go out. We had grown so strong that the vaunted stegos were nothing but a nuisance, to be dunked underwater until they drowned. The end was clearly near for Good Grief. They had been pushed back to the citadel of their base. And so for this last effort, we began a fucking conveyor line of stegos. 2 stegos would be taken down at a time, soak up as much damage as they could before they were near death, brought up, and immediately a new fully healed pair of stegos would be waiting to take its place. I took on the role of the medic, healing up 3 stegos at a time with a snow owl. And this way, no matter how many turrets they had, we could continuously soak them, never giving them a second to breathe. On top of that, we had brought in a Shasta. The saddle of this behemoth allows us to fire torpedoes underwater. And since tech turret projectiles are too slow to intercept these torpedoes, and all the heavy turrets, which could intercept them, were now drained, we could just use the torpedoes to destroy the structures holding up the tech turrets, meaning we didn't even have to soak them. Once this tower fell, in one last hopeless attempt to keep us out, Good Grief put up a tech force field bubble, but all this would do is delay the inevitable. As we were shooting it down, and their empire crumbled to sand around them, Good Grief, always playing the part of a villain, spent their last moments shit-talking us, even bragging that he was despawning the loot inside his base. But we didn't care. It wasn't about the loot. It'd never been about the loot. Eventually, the tech bubble was destroyed and we began breaking into their actual base. I formed up with those of us ready to flood into the breach. This would be damn near a suicide mission. We'd be the tip of the spear. Whatever was waiting for us inside, we'd have to face on our own. But remembering what Humano had said to me, I really want to keep playing, but just not good enough, I readied myself.
I'm in.
Half the team was cut down by turrets immediately, but one of our guys with a tech rifle had made it inside. I put boots on where my flippers had once been and swam in. Some of their outside turrets could still shoot inside the base. We were pinned down behind one of their sleeping pods, but our guy with a tech rifle had made it further into the base, and seeing where their generator was, he opened fire on it. All we had to do was cover him from any enemies inside the base. Once that generator was destroyed, all the turrets would go offline.
Get his ass.
There we go.
Is there
Someone just respawned. Someone just respawned.
Eventually, the guy taking cover with me was killed by the turret, and a short bit later so was I. But we had done our job. The generator was off. The next time I swam into Good Grief's base, all turrets were offline. We had won. Completely and utterly. To think that this had all started with me crawling around in the woods outside their base with a crossbow, and now here we were, slaughtering every tame they ever had, all because they couldn't control themselves and for whatever reason felt the need to completely destroy a wooden house. And for our final bit of retribution, this fucking underwater Bond villain layer base was torn down to its roots. We had won, and so to avenge Humano, we left Good Grief with nothing. The day after the battle, I had one final thing that needed to be done. I visited Humano's now long since abandoned base and left him a note and a frog saddle. I'd achieved my goal, but it was still a bittersweet victory. Thank you to everyone who joined me in my rebellion against Good Grief. I couldn't have done it without you guys. Especially at the end there. And of course, thank you for watching. This is by far my longest one yet, and I hope you guys found it entertaining throughout. Going in, I didn't think this would be nearly an hour long, but I just kept looking through the footage and there was so much cool shit I wanted to add, and here we are. With a special thank you to those at the big fella tier: Swentiki96, Artist Mercurial, Warsix Mateos, Brady Jarvis, Jolly Endings 07, Slipknot 04, Cal Kuchesta, Maggie, Anchorwing, Materialism 85, Kagan Zarin, and Heath Hothead 9 Dion. And an extra big thank you to those at the Albertus Lover tier: Pebble Penguin 252, Pendragon, Kyle Ratliff, David F. Jackalope, Dan the Bait, Bisky Riznu, Mano the Cat, and Platypus Advisor. Big ups, boys.